what is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the third album by country music band Shenandoah. Basically, this project is called Extra Mile, and it came out in the spring of 1990. So the thing about this particular band here is I don't know a super ton about them as far as pitch like that kind of happened. I wanted to get to more full-bound kind of country music, not just from like the 2010s, and I wanted to get to more country music, not just from like the 2010s and the late 2000s, but also some fairs from more further back in the day, just to see some fairs behind that as far as those particular pitches can happen. Now, I at least know some folks like Billy Ray Cyrus, Tim McGraw, some of those type of folks within the aspect of like country music from like before 1995, 96 or so. But just within the pitch, this is a band that I wasn't as known about. So just within the pitch, I look after this. Some pretty good stuff here to be able to say within that fair. Now the thing about it is within the usual get up and the conduct that's on this particular channel, this particular stage, this is kind of more of like a primer for what is going to happen more down the road. Maybe not immediately down the road, but I will probably eventually review more stuff like Tim McGraw and some of those type of folks as more times kind of eventually happen. But this is going to seem like more of just like a lighthouse of one concerning the concept that this is just out of the ordinary for like the standard fare as far as this person can happen. But it's not going to be eventually as far as this pitch can happen. This is some great stuff here. This 90s country, just within the sense, has had 4 top 10 singles off this particular product on like the country charts as far as this fair is going to happen. So it was a big deal around like around the early 90s, between like 1990 and like the fall of 1991. So I had a pretty good promotional run as far as this pitch can happen. Now look after within the fair, just some good stuff here to kind of get within that tone and seeing the particular fair. So I wouldn't know as much full bound within the fair, just because, you know, within the concept behind it. And rap music, for example, club type songs were not as full bound kind of popping like that within the pitches around this particular time as well. When you think of things like the songs that were number ones back in 1990, when you think of songs like Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby and MC Hammer's Can't Touch This, some of those type ones, those were relatively kind of retro and very throwback within the sense. So it makes sense that country was kind of like that as well. If you're thinking you're going to get like a country two-step type song, I mean, you might have had like square dance type songs or some of that type fair, but in terms of like a kind of disco, like in terms of like some disco bounce or some sort of shake your ass type jive within a country type sense, it may not have that as full bound on here, but it does have like some good smoky type songs within a pitch. If you like the song Ghost in This House, there's like some good type of appeal. So just like that outback kind of rumination just within the fair, just having like that general fatigue and malaise about it. There's actually surprisingly not a lot of stretchers on here as far as this pitch can happen, apart from the song I Got You. For the most part, there's some frolic songs within a pitch, a lot of outback, kind of just smoke like an L, something like that, get some barbecue, some of that type fair, just one of those particular type tones just within the pitch behind it. I'd have to say it's kind of countryside pastime, and just between like outdoor kind of dinners, just with more it's kind of outback type fair with more cookouts outside. I'd have to say within the pitch, just some sunset gaze and some of that type fair, just backyard type music within the pitch behind it, with like the occasional, I would say within like a standard sense, this has like romantic tinge about it within the sense of just having like the tone of just kind of fatigue about it, just kind of the concept of kind of day life, nightlife within the pitch. The more homely type songs are actually the ones that have a little bit more fatigue about them, just in the sense it's not really. So this particular album has like some day shift kind of work shift type fair within a sense. Songs like Next to You, Next to Me, Put New Roots Down, and like She Makes the Coming Home Worth the Being Gone, some of those type of ones. But there's also some pitches like that standard kind of malaise, just in the aspect of just like standard kind of forlornness and like a makeshift kind of pushes within the tone. Just more rainy day, kind of more almost, I wouldn't say emo as much full bound, but definitely moody within the fair behind it. Just that fatigue of things. Songs like Ghost in This House, I would say like She's a Natural, and then there's at least one other one like that on here, probably like I'd say Going Down With My Pride, some of those type ones. So it's just within the fair, kind of splits between the middle. But yeah, some good promotional type fair about this product, 5 type singles on here within the relative pitch, just some good varietized type fair. It does a pretty good job with that, just considering the fact that not commonly, from what I remember from like for album type fair amongst like the 90s, there weren't typically too many albums that would get to the 5th single. So this is definitely seemingly like a bigger deal than what probably I would remember from that particular time. Just in the pitch behind it, it's kind of before my time for the most part as far as those pitch can happen. I just would look within the fair, but this it was a pretty big deal throughout the 90s. Just in the pitch behind it, it's good type concept within the fair behind it. So it's just some good type stuff. It's going to get a pretty solidly high enough score within the pitch behind it. Definitely pretty close, like a classic type score. Definitely impactful. Makes me question some other notable country albums that were around this particular time. Because when you when you think of folks from like the 70s, 80s, some of that type of stuff, when you think of folks further back than like Billy Ray Cyrus, Tim McGraw, some of those type of folks, and I want to say Bob Seger was a country singer, not really as full bound. Sure, he might have been more late 70s, 80s. Don't know as much full bound. I know Willie Nelson was part of the 60s, 70s. So there's just some folks within that relative type pitch, some of those type fairs. I want to say possibly Reba McEntire, some of those type folks. She might have been 80s, some of that type fair. Don't know as full bound within the pitch behind it, but just being able to say it's kind of within the tone that this seems like a more seminal type project than what I might have known as far as this pitch going to happen. But I look within the tone, just the aspect that it probably was just within the fair, the fact that it got to 5 singles and 4 of these were top 5 type singles within the, or 4 of these were top 10 type singles within the country chart. So some good type tones just in the pitch, but this is a yesteryear kind of country album, but it nails it pretty well. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. Yeah, basically there were 5 of these. The first one was Next to You, Next to Me, and the first single off this product was Next to You, Next to Me, and I recommend all 5 singles off this product. Really, out of the 10 songs on this album, I wound up recommending 8.5. So the only real song I don't recommend in any fashion would just be the last song you hear, Daddy's Little Man, and then the song Going Down With My Pride is an almost song. So it's just kind of within the pitch, but we'll get to that within that fair. But Next to You, Next to Me is like a pastiming kind of country outback occasions to kind of get here, just some simple late afternoon lunch and chat to kind of have within that tone. And as I say, just a good type concept for some outdoor types. Next to You, Next to Me is some good type concepts for some outdoor type snacking just within the pitch behind it. Definitely like 5 o'clock p.m. type lunch, some of that type fare, 4:30 p.m. type lunch just within the pitch behind it. Just more outdoor type occasions, some good type fare, just barbecue type music just within the pitch behind it. Just simple. This is one that just has like that frolic kind of about it. This is like a real country fried type one, something that you would catch just like in a more just real outback type senses within the pitch behind it. This is what I talk about here just before, like the more contemporary typeness. Apparently country went through some of that same resolve before you got to folks like more of like Carrie Underwood and Taylor Swift and some of those type folks that probably from like the 2000s that had more modern kind of just more step out. I mean, obviously back in 1990, this is before the internet and some of that type fair where things were more kind of contemporary within a sense, but it's just kind of the tone of this more, it would be more within the fashion, just kind of backyard type fair, barbecue smoke going all over the place, pitches like that, just outdoor, tablecloths, pitches like that, just a standard fare of just burger frying and ribs and some of that type fare within the pitch behind it. Just looking within tone, it's a good tightness kind of get there. Just late afternoon, some of that type fare, just outback kind of pastime, good type stuff for that. Ghost in This House is a nice one. This is a quality type one here. It's like a dreary and kind of more emphatic, kind of personable. Ghost in This House is like a dreary and more emphatic, kind of personable, kind of malaise kind of get here. Just a country R&B type ballad to kind of say this country ballad, but within a sense of just like that R&B type fashion, just like some real fatigue about it. Just a slow dance type song kind of get. Romantic, it's definitely a romantic type one, just in a more sense of just kind of being like down on your luck as far as those pitch can happen. I would say that Jason Aldean's pretty good at these particular type songs. It's kind of a heartland stretcher just in the pitch, but just not so much in like a stretching kind of particular frame of mind. The next single, I Got You, is more of like a traverse kind of stretcher, but this particular one, Ghost in This House, is just kind of fatigue, a disc, realizing you have an empty house, pitches like that is kind of the fair, just kind of being like damn and just really cursing your luck as far as this pitch can happen, is kind of the aspect of just not being in such a jolly type mode just in the pitch behind this for the real aspect behind it. But it also has like that slow dance type appeal just in the pitch behind it. So it's just kind of one, this like the closest thing to probably something within a relative degree contemporary. I also feel like The Moon Over Georgia is a relative contemporary type one. That's another kind of romantic type slow jam type one, or slow dance type one within the pitch, but I look after it. Both Ghost in This House and Moon Over Georgia are just kind of, there's not like, if you're really expecting like some sort of square dance, like real jive liveliness within the pitch, it doesn't have like those dance type tunes, but it is within the pitch that just like that kind of just, it's kind of those romantic gazing type ones with this a little bit more deep, with this a little bit more deep bond type sense within the pitch behind it. So some good type appeal for that. I Got You is a nice one as well. It's the third single here. It's like a stretching kind of sunset gaze kind of pastimes kind of get here to smoke a joint, like to be a nice song to smoke a joint and kind of ruminate, just basic outdoor kind of dinner and chats kind of have within that tone. So this is like a relative good pairing with Next to You, Next to Me, just a little bit more dreary within the sense behind it. It's kind of the concept of, it's a little bit more kind of definitely something past like the hours of probably 3:45, 4:15, like Next to You, Next to Me, more of like 6:15, some of those type ones just in the pitch, or where things are starting to wind down as you start to go in for the night as far as those pitches can happen. It's the last few moments of just like that leftover cookout type fair, just pitches like that. There's kind of some good smokage, just maybe football's on inside some pitches like that, just kind of being out and about, just smoking in between some fairs like that, I'd have to say. But it also definitely works for like that dis malaise, I'm surprised that there weren't more songs like that on this particular album. I would have figured that there would have been enough kind of makeshift stretchers to kind of get for just that aspect of after 4 o'clock p.m. when work just got finished, some of that type of, just some good truck type music to kind of have like some rides homes for those pitches can happen, pitches like that with some good type fare. Kept it to a minimum, but still some good pitches. Gonna get this one nice. This is another top 10 type single off here. The Moon Over Georgia is a nice one as well. This is like a dreary kind of wind down, I'd have to say, and like a vanilla kind of homely kick your feet up kind of dying type song. Kind of get within that pitch. It's a romantic kind of day. This song is like a romantic kind of day closing type song. Kind of get here. It's definitely some good joy to kind of have within that pitch behind it. So this is probably The Moon Over Georgia is a very satiny type song. Kind of get within that pitch. Just a relaxed kind of kickback just within the tone behind it. A little bit like this would probably be a song for like 10 o'clock p.m. with not much in mind just within the pitch, just the leftover moments of just putting like the food away as far as those pitches can happen, just the moments of just within an outback sense, just some wind down just within the fare behind it. Once dinner and the smoke fest and those type pitches are kind of over with songs like Next to You, Next to Me, and I Got You, some of those type pitches, just kind of a fare, just like the retire for the rest of the night as far as those pitches can happen. Just basically nightcap type music just within the tone behind it. I'd say within the tone, just some good type fare for that. Good, nice one to kind of have within this pitch. This is the most popular song off this album according to Spotify. Has over 12 million. This particular song has over 12 million plays, which is surprising because this was not a song that charted as high as some of these other ones on here. But some good type fare for that. It's a good, nice tone to kind of get within that pitch. It's real nice, it's real nice night brush kind of have within an outback type sense. Good type one for that. This is The Moon Over Georgia is an example of a homely type song that just hits a little bit better within the pitch behind. Just has the real nice, just affable aspect behind this, real compelling within the sense behind it. Good type tone. And then When You Were Mine is the 5th single, and this is another one that this was a good type single on here, charted pretty well, but was not a top 10 one. The song's like a smoky and kind of slag day after hours thoughts kind of get within that pitch. Just goes with Ghost in the House as far as, and goes, this particular song goes with Ghost in This House, I'd say. It's a pretty misty type one. I do actually like these fatigue songs on here. They have a pretty good affability about them. They remind me of like the stuff that Uncle Kracker did on his 2004 album 72 and Sunny, or something within that pitch. I think it was called 72, 62 and Sunny, 72 and Sunny, something like that, just in the fair. But that's a pretty good fatigue down from Uncle Kracker, and this particular album has some of those type ones. It's kind of the ballad type malaise, some of that type fair, just being down on your luck, just the pitch of just having like an off day or just pitches like that, just within the fair, just kind of just being like damn, kind of screwed up just within some of those type pitches, just within the tone with some good type fair. This one just has a little bit more affable and kind of more glittery type production type fair, and like a hazy type sense compared to Ghost in This House, but both of which are pretty good 1-2 punch on this particular product here. So there are some ones for like some dinner cookouts pitches like that, some good relative summer outback kind of shindigs, and Next to You, Next to Me, and I Got You. The Moon Over Georgia is like a good nightcap, things winding down type pitch, and then Ghost in This House and When You Were Mine are kind of more kind of smoky, kind of R&B type ballad type fairs, kind of get within that pitch. It just like this kind of fatigue within that tone. So it's just kind of the concept. These kind of switch. It kind of goes from like, you know, a typical kind of Tuesday, Wednesday kind of just got done with work shift type push to like more kind of just like this other side of the coin kind of Monday type music just in the fair, just like that particular just kind of just feeling scuzzy type day just in the pitch behind it. With some good type fair. These are some nice ones, just a good foil. This in particular just has some good type affability. So yeah, that happens to be the product about this particular album. So like I was saying, I wound up recommending 8.5 out of 10 on this particular product. The only song I don't recommend in any fashion is just Daddy's Little Man. So to talk about that one, this is just kind of, I didn't really appreciate as much the full-bound kind of composition of this one, just kind of the pitch behind it. It's kind of felt a little bit more starry-eyed just within the fair, just a more personal type one that just didn't have the same affable type tone behind that one. It's really the only song that didn't have, it's really the only song on here that didn't have some degree of a spark with me as far as this pitch can happen. But then going down with My Pride is another one that's pretty similar to When You Were Mine, and then like Ghost in This House, some of those type of ones. This is an almost song, I mean, this is a good song, but this is like a tugging kind of country ballad, I'd have to say, similar to Ghost in This House, like I was saying, and She's a Natural, some of those type fares. That's another one that's kind of similar to this. There are a series of these on here. It's kind of some after work fatigue, but this one, the dramatic factor of it's a little bit higher just within the tone. It's really feeling curse to your luck type of pitch just within the fare behind it. This one's a little bit more kind of serious about that particular frame of mode. Not quite as much just like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, but just a little bit more of like kind of Going down with my prize just a little bit where it's turned up a little bit more compared to normal. Going down with my prize just a little bit more melodramatic within the pitch of the delivery as to how that one particular kind of goes. That one's just, the fatigue about that one's a little bit higher within the pitch. I mean, some of these just feel like She's a Natural works better within the pitch. When You Were Mine's a nice one that within that soul and kind of smokiness. Ghost in This House is a pretty nice one. It's just kind of within the tone. I mean, I do like these particular songs within that fair. It's definitely a strength of this particular album to be able to do it. But that one just felt like maybe the melodrama was just a little bit, were a little bit just more mildly in the hardcore type sense within the pitch behind it. But I feel like these particular fatigue type songs work pretty damn well. It's just within the pitch that probably this is the only one that didn't, where the spark of that particular appeal just didn't connect this full blown heavily within that fair. But it is another nice song kind of get here, pretty much almost within the factor of being able to say this album would be 9 songs out of 10 within the pitch. Just kind of one where I was more on the fence about going down with my pride within the pitch. I mean, that might be one where I would connect more with later within the pitch behind it. It's a question at this particular stage just felt more of one on the fence. But I would say pretty much 8.5, damn near almost 9 out of 10. So to say within the pitch behind as far as the score I'm going to give this album, I would say just probably like a 9 or a 9.25. Just to say within the pitch behind, I'd probably go ahead and say this album would get a 9.25 out of 10 just because of the 5 singles just within the fair. I realize within the aspect that this album not having like a dance type song or something full bound kind of contemporary, but I do like these smoky kind of fatigue type songs kind of have within the pitch. I just like having off days or just a bad hair day, something like that, just within the tone. This has some pretty good fair. Uncle Cracker is pretty good at that, and I really like that 2004 album. So similar to that particular type fashion, some of these type songs, the fatigue is songs like Ghost in This House, She's a Natural, When You Were Mine do have their good appeal, and there are some good kind of backyard kind of barbecue type moments as well for some of that type fair for like Beer Swilly. Maybe not as much Beer Swilly. This is not as much like a drinker's album. This feels like more of just kind of like smoke backwoods and swishers type fair, just in the pitch of like you and a couple pals or just you and a bay as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. It's kind of within the tone, but it does have some of those moments on here. So talk about some of these songs on here. Basically, she makes the coming home worth the being gone is like a back on the outback evening kind of. Basically, she makes the coming home worth the being gone. This is like a back. Basically, she makes the coming home worth the being gone. That's a nice one here just to be able to say this is like a back on the outback kind of evening scene, kind of usual smokish type fair, kind of get within that sense. This goes pretty well with Next to You, Next to Me, I'd had to say. Some of those type ones especially goes well with putting new roots down. Some of those type fairs, just kind of a pitch of like, there are some country frolic type ones kind of get here. A lot of this just has more of like the aspect of just like the looming type nature, just fatigue about it, but it is a good balance to kind of have like day life with night life as far as those pitch kind of having just a good type tone, 2 sides of a coin. It's a good type pitch, just the standard aspect behind it, just basic fare, basic kind of relative hop and bop kind of country frolic just in the pitch, just a little bit more evening based about it, just hitting up like a barbecue joint, getting some swishers, some of those type fares just within it. She's a Natural is a nice one on here. It's like a rainy day kind of country makes you ballad to kind of get here, just a moody and kind of down in the dumps enjoy to kind of have within that pitch behind it, just some typical push to kind of have like a standard kind of rainy Monday, Tuesday, some of those type pitches just behind it. Pretty much just like a more makeshift type song compared to Ghost in This House being more kind of around the neighborhood, kind of around the house type rumination, and When Your Mind comes within that same type fare. This is just more one when you have stuff to do for the day, bills paying, light bill pay, some of that type fare to kind of get within that tone, just kind of more out and about, just within the aspect of this kind of not having such a good day. It's a good type tone for that. And then Putting New Roots Down is a nice one as well. This one goes with Next to You, Next to Me, and Coming Home, I'd had to say. And she makes the coming home worth the being gone. It's like a smoky kind of outback frolic, I'd had to say. Just some lunchtime tokes to kind of get within the sense behind it. So just having some barbecue at like noon, 1 o'clock, some pitches like that. Some relative pep about this particular one. It's good swisher in your car, some pitches like that, swisher in the truck, some of that type fare to smoke in. Maybe not so much at work lunch break, but just in the pitch of just having like a lunch on like a warm type day, some pitches like that, just enjoying like some October, September, August type smokage within the fare behind it, some of that good type fare, some good type pitches to have some good enjoying like the Outback type fare, good type pitch for that, just barbecue type music definitely I'd say just get some good, get some ribs and pitches like that, Chick-fil-A, some of that type fare I'd say, so it's a good type tone for that. So I look within the pitch as far as those particular fares going to happen, just the aspect as far as saying that, yeah, just to talk about once again with going down with my pride, this is just a real nice one, kind of get within that tone. So yeah, just to talk about these songs on this particular album, so it has like a good handful of songs for like that after work shift kind of. This particular album has like a good assortment of songs for like that more fatigue of just kind of being down in the dumps, and it also has like some good day frolic within a pitch, like a few smokage and barbecue type songs kind of get within that fare. So this album gets a 9.25 out of 10. 5 singles, 4 of which were top 10 on the country. So 5 singles, 4 of which were top 10 singles on like the country charts far as those fairs can happen. So a lot of this was pretty much like a big deal around the 90s, 1990, 1991, some of that type fair. Now I don't know as full bound as like the true trajectory and just the overall splash that this particular album made, but I'd say it seems like it was a pretty big deal, like I was saying. So it's just within the pitch. Don't know what's up with Shenandoah as much nowadays. I looked them up on Wikipedia. They've at least dropped an album as recent as 2020, but it seems like their heydays was probably back between like the mid-late 80s to about the early 90s or so. So they did have like some other charting songs, but they didn't have a super ton of these. They weren't like the typical kind of Jason Aldean, Tim McGraw, and like folks like Florida Georgia Line, some of those type of folks that just had consistent kind of charting hits just consistently for more than just 5 or 8 years or some of those type of pitches just in the ton. It just feels like within the fair that country charts back in those days were a little bit more differential within the ton. But that's a lot of things. That's also rap music. That's also R&B. That's pop in a lot of senses. Some of those type of ones. Pretty much a lot of these, apart from maybe rock or like the occasional metal, I'd say just in the pitch. But for the most part, these were just kind of ground laying type songs within the country type fair as far as those pitch can happen. Surprisingly contemporary for what I thought it to be. It's just kind of the concept here is just being able to say that this doesn't sound that terribly outdated, with the exception of the fact that it just doesn't have like a good square dance or just contemporary dance disco type song kind of get within that pitch, just something kind of get the asses shaking, some of that type fare. But apart from that, I'd say this is pretty, actually the jive about this particular product is this is not a square type album. This is actually, it has some good consolidation about it, that it's Apple within a sense. It's a vanilla country album circa like the times for what it was before like internet and things like that, before like standard fare of more typical fare like Google and some of that type of stuff. But within the pitch behind this is actually a pretty relatively contemporary album that does have its spice about it and has a fun factor as well for like outdoor kind of backyard cookouts and some of that type fare, and just barbecue runs and some of that type pitches, and just like some kind of moody, kind of ghostly like fatigue as far as those pitch can have. So some good type tone. The social score though, I'll probably give the social score probably like a 9.25 also, just because the 5 singles are pretty damn good. Like I said, the only thing this album really lacked is just like a dance smash, but that was probably a little bit before the time as far as those pitches can happen. But apart from that, top 5 singles, a lot of good runs. Is Day Life, Nightlife, just within the pitch, some makeshift. Day Life, Nightlife, just within the pitch, some makeshift type songs on here, just some good aspects of just like some good affability. This is not, like I was saying, this is not just like an album where you just come home and that's it as far as those pitches can happen. It actually has some good flavor as far as the aspects of just some outings, and just whether it is just paying bills or just getting some food and grubs and pitches like that, date afternoon, some of that type fare. Just has a good festivity of the goings on as far as those pitch can have. So it's a good type fare. So the future, just what I'd say, there are some other Shenandoah albums like I was saying, but this is actually a pretty star-studded type project here and has a lot of appeal. So some good stuff.